You know, I saw a social media posting the other day that said, as long as conservatism is perceived to be a white thing, it will, and I'm paraphrasing, it will never achieve what it was. It was something like, as long as it's seen as, and I wrote back, I just retweeted it and wrote back, well, then don't think of it that way. Conservatism is not a race-based thought process. The idea that you analyze what works, you change what doesn't work, or stop doing what doesn't work. You look for it. In other words, you learn from experience. You understand that traditions and things that are built over time that stand the test of time do so because they work. And that things that do not work, you look at socialism, you look at wealth redistribution, you look at all these big government ideas, central planners who just keep on planning. And every time it fails, all they want to do is increase the size, scope, cost, and timeline of the plan, no matter how bad it fails. And what's even more bizarre about the support for this is the people who sit around the table planning are never affected by their plans. This is what I was saying about people like Jeb Bush. When they see anger, when they see frustration, and they don't understand it, they can't gauge it, they don't get it, it's because nothing in their life has been affected that way. So when you hear people talk about public education, the people who plan and promote public education send their own children to private school. It's so good for everyone else. That's why I always say in this program, socialism's for the people, not the socialist. Now, joining me on the program right now is somebody who's been working diligently to bring this message all around the country. Our friend Star Parker, haven't spoken in a little while, president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, urbancure.org. How you doing, Star?
I'm good. Just finishing up a forum here in Charleston, South Carolina after the debate, and I almost forgot I was on. So,
well, I had to give you a righteous setup here. I haven't seen you in a while. All right, let's start with you were at this forum with Paul Ryan and Tim Scott. We're going to get to that. I want to talk about the debate real quick. What was your takeaway from the debate from last night?
Well, it got a little noisy for sure, and they got distracted. I mean, the folks at Fox Business that are my friends actually did a good job in trying to bring forth questions, but I think that they got lost when some of the candidates got off track to start just going after each other, and the personal rivalries because they're having to battle them in the different states, whether it's Iowa and or New Hampshire. That platform, the debate platform, especially with the presence of Donald Trump, gives us an opportunity to speak to the entire society and the rest of the world about conservatism, what it means, what it looks like in the Republican Party, and I think we missed a little bit of that opportunity last night.
All right, let's talk about this poverty forum. This is the problem I have with Paul Ryan. When Paul Ryan said that, when he spoke of that culture of unemployment, meaning that people that live in major metropolitan cities have had generations of politicians before them who've taxed the local economy, regulated the local economy, turned over the local economy to big labor, and this is the environment they grew up in. It's not their own personal fault that this is what came before them. But as soon as he was branded a racist for saying that, he ran off in the other direction instead of using that as an opportunity to say, wait a second, Marcia Fudge, wait a second, Congressional Black Caucus, who's in charge of these cities? Political people like you or political people like me? And then open the discussion even further. Republicans tend to cut and run whenever they're accused of being racist rather than staying in the debate.
Well, I don't know of that particular instance that you're referring to, but I have known Paul Ryan for 20-something years. I mean, since he came to Washington, remember him when he was with Jack Kemp and so I don't know about that particular issue, but I do know that one of the reasons that he doesn't engage on argument with the Congressional Black Caucus is because the scripture says getting in somebody else's battle is like taking a dog by the ears. The Congressional Black Caucus is not going to change. The Congressional Black Caucus is not going to hear anything that he would have to say, and they know and he knows that those communities have been run by and ruined by policies of liberals. But when you're talking to a liberal, they just don't care. One of the challenges then that you run into is what one of our legislators is looking at, Sean Duffy, where he just mentioned to the Black Caucus a week ago that maybe you should think about these high abortion rates in your community, and why don't we hear from you on that? Now they want to censor him. They want to put it in his permanent record that he's a racist. You don't get opportunities sometimes to get rid of that label once you are labeled. And while in the grassroots it's frustrating and people don't care if they have that label, when you are a legislator, it's meaningful. I remember when they played the race card on John Ashcroft after they were finished. He was so wounded. It was like, well, now how do I get my reputation back? When they played the race card on George Allen, it ruined him forever. He was presidential. They saw he was presidential, and they made sure that he would never be the president simply by playing that card. So I think that while there is a lot of frustration that says, take them on, guys, some are just weary in battle. They just feel, man, we've been taking them on, and we've seen a whole lot of our good guys die.
Well, see, but this is the problem.
They just want to continue their political careers.
So many of the political elite of failing cities, they know that if things were to change and improve, it would call their power, their status into question. In other words, it's almost
all of them do. That's the reason that they fight to the death to make sure that nothing is heard from the right, because they know that we have those ideas. They know that if their arguments are weak and the evidence is clear, so they've got to keep blaming Republicans. Otherwise, they do lose their seat, because what they do know is that if blacks and others that are trapped under the regime of these liberal policies start to ever hear from the other side and start nodding their head yes, and start to want to get new ideas, that they're out of a job, and then they're going to be looked on in disdain that they never told them the truth to begin with. So they have to make sure they never hear it. And that's why you see such venom from the left when it comes to somebody coming in and telling some Republican coming in and telling them that maybe they should consider that race is not the reason that they're still in that social state.
So what are some of the good ideas coming out of you? I have to imagine that if you're looking at some of these, this event, this gathering in South Carolina, because it seems that the Democrats will never give up on the idea that if you raise taxes too high, if you start and you make the cost of living of the area too high, the antidote to that is not pushing up the minimum wage, it's bringing down taxes. Because if you push up taxes and push up wages artificially, then businesses that can't make a profit are going to leave. But no matter how many times you say this to a Democrat, they don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it, so that's why you don't talk to them. When I started in this a long time ago, and you know my story, I mean, I believed all the lies of the left and self-destructed until God got a hold of me. But when you think about who you're talking to, when I first started into the pundency side, if you'll call it that, selling the ideas, one of my pastor friends said, just stop talking to them, stop yelling at them. You're not talking to them, you're talking to the millions of people sitting out there listening on their couch. They're listening for truth, so tell it to them. Tell them your story. So when you talk, the Jack Kemp Forum, which was last week, Jack Kemp Foundation Forum, the case was made. They had 6 of the presidentials there. Senator Tim Scott and Speaker Paul Ryan interviewed them on just specifically the issue of poverty. And it was fascinating because they actually were able to, the governors, point to things that they have done. Now, whether it was hard to get done, yes. Whatever our views are and people think about the specific issues that they like or dislike about the different governors, that's between them and how they're going to pull the trigger on their vote in this primary. But did they make the case? Yeah, Jeb Bush made the case that he's been thinking about these things for a long time. He's been working them for a long time, and they're actually starting to work for the poorest in his state. John Kasich made the case. Chris Christie made the case. Mike Huckabee, it was very impressive. Marco Rubio held his own about what he knows needs to be done. And then Ben Carson was there as well to talk about his story and how he knows practically that the ideas of the right work. What we're doing today, the reason that I'm with you is because I took from that being here in South Carolina, and started saying, maybe we should look at the GOP and talk about raised poverty education on our own, independent, through my organization, which is 501c3, so we have no political skin in the game. But let's just talk to some of the people here in South Carolina that represent Black interests and communities and see what they're thinking about raised poverty and education in the GOP. It was a debate debriefing, and we had some interesting discussion, which will be available at urbancure.org here in a little bit. But one was a state legislator. He's an African-American Republican. He's the only Black Republican in the great state of South Carolina, and he is madly in love with all conservative ideas and principles, and his name is Samuel Rivers, and he shined, and he talked a lot about the opposition. One was tasked by Governor Nikki Haley to run the Commission for Minority Affairs. It's another one of these governmental sub-entities that specifically goes into the hardest-hit communities to figure out what has broken down and how do we fix it. At the end of the day, I can go on about what was on the panel, but the energy in the room shows that one thing for sure, we had diverse voices, some on the right, some on the left, but at the end of the day, they said we need education, and we need to know how to get these children a new reality. And I think what came clear was the difference between the liberal approach to these issues and the conservative approach. Liberals want unions and big government to control these areas for poor communities, and Republicans or conservatives want federalism. They want to get it closer to the place where it matters most. And what happened by the end of this forum today here in Charleston, sponsored by CURE, was all of them in the end agreed that maybe federalism is the best way to approach these things, to get that stuff out of Washington back to the states. We're spending $900 billion a year now on these means-tested poverty programs, and none of them are working. So I really believe that a lot of African Americans in particular are looking for new ideas. Now we just have to go in and tell them some. So I was even glad that the RNC sent over a representative to make a case for limited government when it comes to fighting poverty.
Star, if you can get Democrats to start opening their minds to federalism, not always racing to the federal government, having everything federalized, a new bureaucracy created, another program created, hiring a bunch of federal workers, all to have it do really nothing to change anybody's life, then please, by all means, get out there. Go wherever you got to go. Wherever you got to be, go there.
I'm trying. And in fact, this was so successful here that we think that we're going to go into Iowa now. And Des Moines, it's interesting how every state, as conservatives and particularly Republicans, we need to stop crossing our fingers and praying that the big cities, when their vote comes in, that a lot of people stayed home. No, they're coming to the polls anyway. So, I'm going into their communities and letting them know what's at stake. We've had 50 years of left-wing policies. We've had 8 years in your face to show you how much more damage we will do to you, and you will live like they do in third world countries as long as we stay in charge. Yeah, it's time to compete with that voice, and so that's what we're doing at CURE. And we just want people to know it's up to them if they decide that they want the same. What you're getting at that Einstein, you're doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, not going to happen. You're going to fall further behind. So, I think it's time to think about federalism and think about some new policy initiatives. We only got to education. That hour and a half went so fast here that we could have gone all day. We didn't even get to crime. We didn't get to housing policy. We didn't get to entitlements. We didn't get to all of the things that the GOP didn't just start thinking about. Just the major media doesn't let anyone know that we're thinking about them, because if the left wing ever found out what we were doing, or the people that the left wing control ever found out that we have been doing these things and they work much better for their lives, then liberalism in this country is over. It'll be history. Socialism will not be the reality.
Well, the amazing thing is somebody thinks it's more efficient to have money leave the community for Washington, only to have people representing the community go to Washington to beg to bring it back.
Bring more.
Well, yeah, and to try to bring more. Star Parker, urbancure.org, president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Have a great weekend. We'll speak to you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, 1-866-95-PATRIOT, 957-2874. Second hour's next.